I'm Silver, the Rogue Yogi, born clairvoyant and near-death experiencer, and I'm here to help you remember that you are your best guru. And today I want to talk about self-honesty. Seems like an obvious topic. Why wouldn't someone be honest with themselves? But I was just watching a show, and one of the characters said to the other, living in the truth is a tough place. And it really can be. That's why we have that old saying, the rosy colored glasses, or why you can look at something that's so obviously different to someone else than what you're seeing, because either your brain or your heart are shaping how you see it, versus the objective person is like, no, I can see that's not a healthy relationship. And I have always been someone who has preferred to ignore the inconsistencies out of fear of wanting to deal with them for as long as I could, until that became no longer possible. And I can look back and I can see that this started a long time ago. It started with me seeing clairvoyantly, knowing my parents didn't believe me, thinking I was broken and bad, and never wanting anyone to find out who I actually was. Because if they did, just like the example with my parents, they would, one, not believe me, and two, they'd ultimately leave. Especially if you are a highly sensitive person or an empath, this is probably going to apply to you, because we can glean a lot more layers of truth than what's only just being said. And there are so many different ways different people are able to do this, but here's a really basic one. If I'm talking to someone and they respond, it's almost like I can feel the subtitles of what they're saying regarding how they actually feel. Never mind what their words are. That's just one example. And what I've noticed is that the bigger the incongruity, the harder it is for me to acknowledge. And that is really unfortunate, because we're talking about the load-bearing beams of my life. It took me until my 40s to even see that I did this. And I want to walk you through it in case you're relating to me. I remember I first let myself notice or register or acknowledge something after the fact. But even that was still a miracle. It was on my wedding day, and I had this running through my head. We're running out of time. And we were taking photographs, and my former husband and I were last, and we were together. And a part of me was just like, don't do this. A part of me wanted to throw up, but the bigger part of me couldn't handle it. It was like, screw it. And I remember standing there, and I wanted to puke as I said it, but I was like, do you think I look pretty? And I got like monosyllabic answer and no eye contact. And I had this one dream of walking down the aisle and eliciting some kind of compliment or some kind words when we met at the end of the aisle. And that hadn't happened. And I was devastated. I never dreamed about getting married. I just didn't. But when it actually came down to it, I did have that one thing I wanted. And I got my technical answer, and we kept going. And later, I was struck dumb by the factuality of it, of how pathetic that simple situation really was. And it was like when we were getting ready to do the cake, and something about the way he fed me the cake, it was like how you feed a horse. And I remember like bending down and like nibbling, and just one, feeling like a horse and being like, oh my God, what, can anyone else tell how stupid this looks? And two, it came to my attention, and guess what? That's messed up. You had to strong arm your husband for a single compliment on your wedding day. And that might seem so small, but the victory was in myself honestly allowing myself to notice it before I pushed it away. And even if it was after the fact, it was still the first time I stayed with something uncomfortable long enough to notice something and acknowledge it. So I saw that, and I was like, you've got to pull your head out of the sand more often. Because if it's going on at this deep a level, it's going on everywhere. And then I had a very similar moment, but this time I had been practicing for years, trying to face and own up to the truth. And this time I was 14 years into my relationship, and I had this moment where I locked eyes with myself in our bathroom mirror, and our bathroom was smaller than a phone booth. And I was hopping on one foot, trying to get into my pajamas in this tiny chicken coop of a room. I'd banged my elbow on the towel bar and bumped my hip on the doorknob. And I was like, what are you doing? I looked ridiculous. And for the first time in real time, I let myself be like, wait, what's going on here? And honestly, what did I F up? My former husband was just outside watching TV and ignoring me per usual. And I had to stop myself and rewind time. And it was just something about that moment of looking in the mirror I started going through. What I realized later were the regulations of our marriage. I was like, what did I F up? And I started thinking, I was like, I didn't go on the same floor as him when he was home. I filled the ice cube tray. I made red meat, and I couldn't think of anything else. And yet here you are, opting to change clothes, a cardboard box basically. And then I was like, when I walked in the room, I walked by him and he didn't say anything, and that's usual. But then I remembered, for some reason that night, his ignoring me felt heavy as a rifle scope. And I don't know which of us was doing something different, but that was an enormous noticing for me, because I operated the same way every day. My heart was like, we can't deal with the truth, so we're not gonna see it. Don't see. And something about the way he was when I walked in, it was so piercing and so strong. I grabbed my pajamas and darted for the bathroom and shut the door. And that's when the realization struck me. I was like, oh my God, I know what it is. After 14 years, suddenly I can't get changed in front of my husband. I had no idea at that moment, even that noticing was one fingerprint's worth of truth. I could not have told you that at all. I really actually felt like I cracked the case, even though to someone who is much more aligned with reality would not stop there and be like, well, why? To me, it was just such a big deal to notice anything in the moment. That called for an extreme level of vulnerability, of actually consciously stopping, running things backwards, and trying to pinpoint the problem. And I did. I pinpointed the pinky finger that sticks up out of the water of an iceberg, and that was it. But it felt like such a victory to me, because even though it was small, it was still an actual truth that I hadn't let myself acknowledge until that day and that time. It didn't help me fall asleep any better. It didn't make me feel any better about my marriage, but I did go to bed thinking, this is some kind of developmental progress. Because before that night, I had never allowed myself to stop and be in the discomfort of the moment long enough to glean anything from it. And if you're relating to me and you're like, all right, I am gonna start trying to practice this, where I let myself notice things that don't fit comfortably, that don't make common sense, or that just straight feel wrong. There is a pretty specific pattern. First, you're gonna start noticing these things after the fact. And then eventually, you're gonna start noticing them during the incident, during the exchange, or whenever it pops in your mind, you're gonna let it run through. But the best news about this is the last part, which is you're going to befriend reality to the point where you can see one of these things coming. Get yourself present and in the receiving mode and noticing. And instead of having it whiz by you, you're gonna be there feet planted, totally aware, in the moment and participating in reality as it's happening. I hope this helps. And if you want to talk live about your journey, I hope you join me on Patreon at Rogue Yogi. Thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next one.